Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Pichael, and this is going to be my first video researching and reviewing NFL teams for the upcoming season for fantasy football, DraftKings, Best Ball, so like Underdog Fantasy, and a lot of the different Best Ball leagues that are out there. I'll be doing like individual videos explaining how I approach Best Ball, and I'll be like drafting live and stuff like that on Twitch. So if you want to support the channel or learn something, then make sure to follow me and or subscribe on Twitch. You can join Patreon, get access to Discord and all that kind of stuff. I'm in like a transitional period right now with like content because the league season is winding down, but I have more stuff coming out, including league specific stuff. So watch out for all that. But let's get into the Arizona Cardinals. So there are a few things that I'm going to do. I want to make sure that we have a basic understanding of what they were last year, how they performed in fantasy, and then go into the individual players that left and the new players that are on the team, and then kind of give my breakdown for players who I might be interested in for this season. Um, and things are subject to change. Things change, but we're just going to be focused on the individual teams. So, in regards to real life football, the Cardinals went 5-10. They're in the NFC West, so they're going to play everybody in the NFC West. I should actually get the schedules up as well because it'll tell us like if they have an easy schedule or not. So the the NFL uses a rotating schedule where your teams play against two other divisions and then some other random teams. So we have the Arizona Cardinals are in the NFC West. They're playing the NFC East and the AFC East. And that's pretty interesting. So the Cardinals will have to play the Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, and Redskins. Last year, that was a good thing for fantasy football. The AFC East, the Patriots typically have a good defense. The Bills typically have a good defense. The Jets and Dolphins are not as good generally, but they're both kind of trending in the right direction. The Patriots, we're not sure how good they're going to be. That Tom Brady now that Tom Brady has left, but I mean, that's just all speculation at this point. Um, and then there are random teams, not random, but there are other teams that uh, are thrown into the schedule. So let's take a look at that. We'll take a look at that later. Um, so let's start taking a look at players that left. So DJ Swearinger's on their defense. He was an okay player. I don't have a huge focus on defense in general. I look at it more as a collective unit. And for fantasy football, we're really looking at the offense. But this is just stuff to keep in mind for when we're analyzing teams that have to play against them in like a specific week. They lost David Johnson. So last year, David Johnson had an okay season, but really didn't play as much. He's still a really talented player. I'm a David Johnson fan. I think the public perception on David Johnson is mostly negative at this point. So that might be something to take advantage of. In a PPR league, he's a stronger player, but we'll talk about him more in the Houston Texans video. Damiere Byrd was like a third or fourth string wide receiver. Not really one of the most important players, but did have big play upside. So I know I played him in DraftKings sometimes. That seems to be it for players that have left that were important. They gained Kevin Peterson. That name doesn't jump out to me as a cornerback. DeAndre Hopkins, that's a huge acquisition for them. B.W. Webb sounds familiar, but I don't really know how significant that is. Devon Kennard, I think that he's a pretty good player. Kenyon Drake was already there last year. So Kenyon Drake had a good end of the season, but I don't know how much I really like Kenyon Drake. That's not somebody that I'm targeting in best ball. I'm not willing to draft him early on. I'd rather get somebody else. Kentrell Bryce, Ken Crawley, that sounds familiar. Dan Arnold. I think Dan Arnold is somebody that there are people that are high on him that I've heard of. Um, Not sure if I really have that much interest. And they still have Max Williams. So this is really the depth chart as of August 23rd. So we have games happening in like 2 or 3 weeks from now. Not sure how relevant a lot of this information, or not sure how relevant the depth chart will be, but we should have some ideas about how good these players are. So I'm gonna go with either like green or red, depending on if I'm looking for these players to have on my team in general, or to play them in DraftKings, or draft them in best ball. So it will come down to like specific strategies and when I can get them in best ball. But Kyler Murray in general, I'm very interested in Kyler Murray. I think that last year they had a lot of short passes, which is really good for PPR. I think DraftKings Best Ball will have full point PPR. I think that Underdog has half point for most of the big contests. But I'm not going to get too strategy specific here. Brett Hundley as the backup. The only reason why a backup is significant is if you're drafting like some of these wide receivers or tight ends, or like if Kyler Murray was to get injured, do we have any faith in Brett Hundley? Personally, I like Brett Hundley a little bit as a backup quarterback. He wasn't great on the Packers at any point in time, and he never really challenged Aaron Rodgers for the starting job. But I mean, Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks of all time, so you can't really blame him for that. Kenyon Drake, um, he's a player that I probably will use on DraftKings, depending on salary, but I'm not looking to target him in best ball. He's not somebody that I'm like super excited about, and I'm not going to invest too much into him. Whoops. Chase Edmonds, I don't have like a deep scouting background or anything like that. I just depend on other people's perceptions of these players a lot of the time. And from what I've read, Chase Edmonds is not really somebody who is going to be able to take over the full time position if Kenyon Drake goes down. So Chase Edmonds and Eno Benjamin are the two players that you might consider for best ball. But I think Eno Benjamin has been the player that more people have drafted at this point because he's a rookie. He has more theoretical upside because we haven't seen a lot of the negatives from him. But it's really tough to say if it's going to be worthwhile. Now we get into the wide receivers, and this is probably the most important part, or the most obvious thing to look at for Arizona, because DeAndre Hopkins just came to the Cardinals. They traded David Johnson for DeAndre Hopkins. DeAndre Hopkins, he's looking for like a new contract or a contract extension or just a bump in like the amount of money that he's making, and I'm not sure if the Cardinals are going to do that before the season starts or anything like that, but that's kind of it's it's an interesting thing to think about. It's not going to keep me from drafting DeAndre Hopkins. If anything, it's going to keep other people from drafting DeAndre Hopkins, and then I can try to get greedy and snatch him in like later rounds, because talent-wise, I think most people agree Hopkins is one of the best players in the NFL at wide receiver, and uh, the negative perception of him out there right now is like he got 160 targets last year. Is there any way that he gets that on the Cardinals? A lot of people think no, but I'm pretty sure that the Cardinals had more passing attempts uh, than the Texans did last year. But the question becomes like, will Kyler Murray focus on getting DeAndre Hopkins the ball? And I feel like he's kind of the he's probably the sort of player that's going to demand the ball, like in the prima donna way, where he's like stomping around on the sideline and yelling at the quarterback to get him the ball in like high pressure situations. And I think that's, personally, I like that for players that I'm investing money in, because they want the ball as much as we want them to have the ball. Christian Kirk, he is a second year player. He was drafted as like the heir apparent to Larry Fitzgerald, but he is fundamentally different than Larry Fitzgerald. So I guess I can talk about them both at the same time. Christian Kirk is either second or third year at this point. I'm not really positive, but he did have a good season last year. Um, he he's a smaller outside receiver, if I remember correctly. A lot of the time, the Cardinals would run uh, three wide receiver sets, but Kirk and Hopkins were really the two main targets. Keyshawn Johnson and um, Demir Bird were both on the field a lot of the time, and I had a lot of exposure to them last year, and they didn't really pay off very much on DraftKings, so I kind of had have a bad taste in my mouth. an interesting thing to think about for this year is what's going to happen to Larry Fitzgerald. Um, Larry Fitzgerald is a good blocking wide receiver, and that's one of the reasons I think even if his effectiveness as a pass catcher dwindles, I think that for a real life NFL team, Larry Fitzgerald's going to be a great player for a couple more years because he's still probably one of the better blocking wide receivers in the NFL. So we could probably see him take on more of a slot role where he's basically a pseudo tight end, basically like an Evan Ingram, where he's really more of a wide receiver than a tight end. I don't think that they're going to start calling Larry Fitzgerald a tight end, but certainly something that is possible in my mind. Um, which also means he could still be on the field in like goal line situations, which are pretty important. Maybe they do like DeAndre Hopkins plus Larry Fitzgerald instead of Christian Kirk. And then at tight end, Max Williams, I'm not excited about. Dan Arnold, I'm not excited about. Other people are, but I am not. What else? I mean, I think that's basically it. So when I'm drafting my best ball teams or drafting for season long fantasy in general, Kyler is somebody that I would look at. Kenyon Drake is someone that I would draft if they fell far enough to me and I felt like there was value there. Eno Benjamin, maybe a late round flyer, maybe in best ball if you need like running back depth. Like maybe Kenyon Drake goes down and Eno Benjamin fills in that role. That could work. Hopkins, a lot of the time in these best ball leagues, you can get DeAndre Hopkins in the second, maybe even third round, and that's because of the amount of uncertainty around him. But if you can get him on your roster for best ball, he's going to have weeks where he scores 20, 30, 40 fantasy points. And that's really what you want to attach yourself to. Maybe he doesn't have the 40-point upside on underdog because of the reduction of points in PPR, but it'll be close. Christian Kirk is another player that I think has good upside. I think it's less likely that he has 2 touchdown performances with 100 yards and 10 catches, something like that. And especially with DeAndre Hopkins there. But if there are games that turn into shootouts with the Cardinals, which should happen more this year than last year, I think that there's a lot to go around. So some people might make the too many mouths to feed argument, but in best ball specifically, you just want the high upside week to week. Larry Fitzgerald, I mean, he's just always going to be there. So maybe he's better for like regular season long fantasy, or if DeAndre Hopkins or Christian Kirk go down, you can play him in DFS. But that's all speculation at this point. So that's basically it for the Arizona Cardinals. I'm going to make more of these videos for the other teams. Make sure to check those out. You can follow me on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube for all of my other content. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you later.